Hello, everyone. Vincent is back, and I'm here to share my story about my journey out of the Watchtower Society and how I became a follower of Christ. And as always, I always say that I'm excited to share my testimony. Well, I always feel like I have to tell you why I haven't made a video in a while, and I'll just be honest with you. My mind has been so wrapped up in world events. It seems like every day there is a major world event. And then I begin to learn about why this event happened and what they, yes, the controllers, how they're using that event to bring about the New World Order. You see, in my last video, I talked about how I began to wake up spiritually to this because of learning about this New World Order, this new world that they want to take us to, which is anti-God, anti-Christ. It's a complete inversion of God and nature, and they want to control us completely. All of our thoughts, they want to turn us into machines. Androids is what they really want man to become. So I am just fascinated by all of these things, and I'm also concerned. That's why I try to wake people up, not because you can do some preparation for what is to come. However, that preparation is very temporary. You can stock up food, water, and all of that. But my main concern is awakening people spiritually to what is going on, because most Christians, actually, I'll be honest with you, are asleep concerning these things. They don't understand how much our world is going to change very, very soon. So my mind has been on all of these things. In fact, sometimes I feel like when I'm sharing this information about the New World Order and the things that awaken me spiritually, it just seems kind of strange for me to be going back to these bare bone basics when we are about to experience some catastrophic changes in our world. But I still need to present these things because it's part of my testimony. And these are things that eventually led to me being a follower of Christ. All right, now that I explained why I haven't put a video out on a while, let's continue on. So what are some things that I began to learn that really sealed the deal for me as far as like we are truly in some type of matrix and Satan is truly the God of this system and God is real. Now I'm going to present these things as I was learning them, that I believed in Satan completely and God and all of this, but it's only later that I began to put it all together. As I was learning about these things, I just kind of kept at bay, like these thoughts about Satan and God. I'm like, okay, something strange is going on here, but I was just fascinated with learning, and so I just kept learning and learning and learning, and I just held those things off for a while. So what are some things that really affected me? Well, something that is truly Matrix 101, and people have tried to tell us these things on social media like Facebook, and that is all of our signs and logos, symbolism comes from the occult. And I know that channel I mentioned, that former priest of the Temple of Satan, Mark Passio, that I mentioned in my last video, he began to talk about these things as well, but you can find evidence of this everywhere. And that is like your major logos, like take Google, the Google Play symbol actually is literally the sign of Satan. Now, some might say, well, no, it doesn't mean that. It means the sign of Saturn, and that is correct. Saturn is Satan. Obviously, it even looks the same, doesn't it? But they both mean opposition. Satan, Saturn, it's the same thing. Now, some people might say, well, why? Why is it Saturn? It's because in dark theosophy, in the dark occult that's running this world, they worship Saturn. Why is that? Well, if you study these things, and I know this stuff sounds crazy if you don't know about it, but that is what's really going on right now. Once you learn these things, you're going to understand what the Apostle Paul said, that we have a war, not against blood and flesh, but against the governments, against the wicked spirit forces in heavenly places. Once you understand these things, you're going to look at Paul's words completely different, and you're going to like, whoa, we are really in a spiritual world fighting a spiritual battle. All right. So in ancient times, they believed there was two suns. You had the sun, as we know it, and you also had Saturn. Saturn is known as the darkened sun. So they worship Saturn, and Saturn in mythology was said to devour her children. Now, in theosophy, they do believe in the Bible. They do believe in the Bible, but they interpret it allegorically. For example, they believe Satan, the devil, is the good person in the Bible. He is the one that gave man knowledge to break away from the chains that Jehovah put upon them. And so that's why, like, you have Apple computers, they have the logo of the apple with a bite in it that represents the fact that Lucifer, and that, and that's another thing too, they call Satan Lucifer, but nowhere does it actually say that in the Bible. However, it doesn't matter because Lucifer means light, and we know that Satan is darkness in the Bible, yet they want to say Satan is light. So that whole symbol about the apple being bitten, and if you don't believe that, just watch a video by an old 80s group called Iron Maiden, right when COVID came out. It was called The Writing on the Wall, and it is a cartoon. I recommend that everyone watch that. Even if you don't understand what's going on, what they do, they're trying to show you the demonic powers, the controllers behind the curtain. They're showing you the occultic aspect of our reality, and they also are using predictive programming to show you the destruction of this nation. So you need to watch that, and you'll understand. In fact, how it ends is you have two people, a man and woman. Basically, they look like Adam and Eve. They have an apple, and they take a bite of it. So that's what that represents. So they believe Satan is the good person allegorically in the Bible, and Jehovah is an evil, jealous God who wants to keep men trapped. So that's their whole idea. So they worship Saturn, which is, once again, Satan. It's the darkened sun. But at the same time, because they believe in Lucifer, they, being the good person, they believe that the sun, the real sun, that's Saturn, is the true light, is the true sun, basically. So that's how that works. Now, if you continue to learn about these various logos, you also learn, like the Facebook logo. It came from a Masonic logo known as Tubal Cain. The Google Gmail, it is the Masonic apron. All you have to do is look up Masonic apron in image search, and you'll see all these Masons. They have this apron on, and it's the Google email sign, the Google Mail. So then you have that. And then you can look at, and there's so many symbols, and they all come down to Satan, like Chrome symbol. It's the sign of the king, 666. That's what it represents. And that's why, and it's really true, the twirls in that are 666. The World Economic Forum, in their logo, you'll see the twirling of all three words. It's 666. And as I began to wake up, I began to see this throughout our entire world. I was sitting there a few years ago. I was sitting in a movie theater, and I was watching this movie, and you know how the credits at the end, there's just millions of credits going out, and I wasn't paying attention to them really. But then I noticed at the bottom of the screen, there was a company. You know how they always have, this company is an affiliate of this and that. I mean, it's just so confusing. You don't even know what's going on. But this company, at the corner of the screen, their logo was 666, but it was in disguise. It showed three separate carbon molecules, and we know that in each carbon molecule there's 6 atoms, 666, and that's what they do. They disguise things as their logo within their words, in other symbols as well. So I began to see all of that, and then I began to learn that. And again, this is Matrix 101. I mean, I've seen this stuff on social media for a long time, but now I was waking up, and now I understand what these guys have been trying to tell us for years. And that is, if you look at all of your major commercial logos, most of them tie in with the worship of Saturn. We've already talked about Apple, what their symbol means. But then you look at companies like Comcast. It's a cable company in America. They have the rings of Saturn around it. You may have heard about the brand name Roundup, which is a weed killer. It has the rings of Saturn. Bud Light, at one time, the beer, maybe it still does, it had the rings of Saturn. If you look at Nike, that little check mark, it's the edge of the Saturn ring. And I mean, I can go on and on and on about, you just start looking at these logos and you will see the rings of Saturn or the edge of Saturn. I was watching the Metaverse commercial or infomercial a couple of years ago, and how did it end? There was this big picture, looked like a paradise, and it had Saturn right there. Huge picture of Saturn. So obviously, who is sitting at the creepy table? I listen to one podcast and he always says, oh, what do these companies do? Do they sit around a table to figure out a logo and go, something? I think we're going to use Saturn, because nobody uses the rings of Saturn. No, they are told what to do. And this symbology is very important. It tells you who these controllers are. It's their logo. Saturn is their logo. Just like the cross. Isn't it interesting that the cross is in our matrix? Everyone knows what the cross represents. You see the cross, you think of God, you think of Christ, you think of the ransom. You don't even have to be a Christian. You know what the cross represents. Well, Satan has his own logo, and it is Saturn. And you'll find it in a lot of music. Now, I used to listen to this group. I still do. It's called Queensryche from the 80s. And I would listen to this music all the time, but I thought maybe, some of their songs were just allegorical stories, made up. But one day I was listening to an album. This is when I was starting to wake up. There was this album they made in 1984. Queensryche is a group based out of Seattle, Washington. And the album was called The Warning. And I was at work listening to this, and I'm like, wow, this entire album is about the occult. It is about the New World Order. It's about the controllers. And it tells you how vicious they are, and it tells you what they want to do to us. And it also tells you, the first song is called The Warning. It's talking about how they are warning us of what is to come. How do they warn us? They warn us, sometimes they tell you directly that what they're going to do to us. Other times it's allegorical. You'll be watching a sci-fi movie. You think it's fake. You think it's just fun and pleasurable. But in that movie, they're telling you what their plan is for you. They tell you what they're going to do to us. And they're wanting you to want what they're going to do to us. Other movies and cartoons, they're telling you what's going to happen in the future. You don't understand it till after it happens. It's true what I've been learning, and that is Satan has no original thoughts. He has to mimic God because that's all he knows. So he has his own prophets, you could say, and he prophesies in the same way. Sometimes it's straightforward, other times it's allegorical. And that's what this album is about. It's about how they do that because they are going to bring in their new world order of kings without mercy. And in their second song, in the chorus, it even talks about the time when the master of nations will be revealed. They will come out of the shadows once for all time. But in this album, I began learning about Saturn and all of these things at the time, these logos, which I thought, man, this is really weird. And then I was listening to this song on there. It's called Child of Fire. And the first line was, and this is, I believe it's about the Antichrist. Honestly, I don't know completely what it means, but it's all tied in with the New World Order. And the first line was, born under the darkness of Saturn's rings. And I'm like, okay, what is going on here? Did they say Saturn? And yes, they did. And I began to really see that Saturn is huge with this group. Saturn is Satan. That is really what it is. That's the bottom line. And so I would hear that, and then I began to notice, like in movies, I'd be watching movies, and I was told, and this is what I've listened to on videos, they say, look at the background in these movies, and they will tell you who the controllers are, because the controllers own all of the networks. They own all of the media. So whether you watch Amazon Prime or Netflix, it's all the same. It's all owned by the same Theosophists, Dark Lords. So look at the backgrounds. You will find a few things in every movie, anywhere in the movie. You will find horns, and I notice a lot of horns now in movies. The horn in the occult means power, and the occult can either be good or bad. There's nothing wrong with the occult. God is the most occultic person in the universe or beyond the universe. He's God. So that's why when you read in the Bible how there were 4 horns around the altar, that represents good power. It represents God's power. But on the dark occult, it represents satanic power. So in these movies, you look in the background, you'll always find horns. So many times, it doesn't matter a person's decor. A lot of times they have some cattle skull with the horns. That is very common. If you don't see that, you'll find pictures of animals with horns. Something will have horns. Like there was one sitcom, I'm like, I can't see horns. Then I seen the horns. The horns were that was the jacket rack that was on the wall. Each one was a horn. So you'll find horns everywhere. You will also find the sun, and you'll find both the sun and Saturn. So many times, a baby or some kid will have, they'll have pictures of Saturn or these things floating around, with I forgot what you call them for babies. They play with these things on strings and stuff. Well, a lot of times they'll focus on Saturn right there. So you'll see that in movies, but you also see not just Saturn, you'll see the sun. You'll see the sun everywhere. Sometimes the sun will be the clock. I've noticed a lot of clocks. They are the sun rays. That is Lucifer. That's their light they believe in. So like I was watching this one movie where this man was thrown out of his house, and eventually he went back to his house because he had to get out of his house quickly. He had to grab his furniture and all of that. So he went back, and most of the house was empty, but in this one room, there it was, the clock on the wall, and it was the sun. You'll also find pentagrams, and these are stars. Doesn't matter if they're upside down, doesn't matter. They're all pentagrams throughout movies. Sometimes the decor will not really match, a situation where you could just put stars in the house. So you'll see this little starfish somewhere. These are important symbols to the controllers. They are like serial killers. They like to leave their mark everywhere without necessarily telling you who they are. And that's what we're seeing here. You'll also find the all-seeing eye everywhere. I was watching believe it or not, it was Love is Blind. What's the name of the show? It was one of their first episodes. And because I like to watch things to find the occult in them. So I'm like, what can I find here? Sure enough, the hostess, she had a necklace, triangle, all-seeing eye. I was watching another movie. It was a stupid movie on Netflix. I'm like, what am I going to find here? There were rugs over these banisters, and it was that like Native American art where it's kind of cubed and stuff. And if you don't have an eye for it, you're not going to see it. But if you're awake, you're going to see it clearly. It was the all-seeing eye looking right at you. You'll see this all the time. There was a movie called Ghost where this man becomes a ghost, and he dies, and he goes back and he watches his family and all of that kind of thing. And he was going to jump off a building. Sure enough, in the distance, the all-seeing eye was on a building. You'll find this stuff everywhere. So I began to think, like, what is going on here? How can this actually be synchronized like this? There has to be one group of controllers in control of everything. So this really began to wake me up, because I really began to see Satan in this. But again, I didn't run with the idea. I just kind of kept that at bay. Then as I was learning about sorcery and the occult and black magic and all, there was one podcast that presented something that was new to him, and obviously it was new to me. In the government official website here in this country, they have a page dedicated to the art of magic. Now, what does magic have to do with government? Well, on this page, it talked about how we need to protect that art. And it even has lists of your most famous magicians, people like David Copperfield, ones like that. And then it talked about how there are different types of magic. And something that they said was, it said technology is a form of magic. I couldn't believe that this was actually on a government website, but they're telling you technology is a type of magic. Well, what was interesting is prior to even seeing that page, I was beginning to learn about technology. Almost all technology, if you study it, was created by spiritists, and they had other reasons for creating that type of technology. The television, for example, was created, the man who made it was a spiritist, and he wanted to use the television to get to the other side. Yeah, exactly. Then you had the one who created the rocket, Robert whatever. he was a spiritist as well. All of the famous people that we knew, they were either spiritists or they were, spiritists, they were Masons, they were part of some secret society. They were the ones behind all of this technology, the computer as well. You know, I used to laugh about how the first computer was sold for $666 and, 66 cents. That's true. It's true, because that's the way the controllers work. And you can learn about how the atom was discovered and all of that, and it all ties in with spiritism and visions. It is insane where things came from. As far as technology goes, also too, quantum computers, that is absolutely scary. People don't even understand how these things work. Scientists are trying to study them. Well, I'm not going to go into it too much, but all of this is a form of sorcery. I even wanted to know how the computer chip worked. How does it work? Why does it work? And I thought, well, this is science. I can find tons of information on it. No, you can't. The computer chip is like the brain. You ask someone, how do we think? How does consciousness exist? They'll tell you, well, this is what happens. We have neurons, we have electricity. Now, that doesn't explain how it works. That just tells you what happens. And that's what you'll find about computers as well. They don't really explain it to you. So I went on blogs to read what experts have said about computers, and there was a lot of expressions about, it's a form of sorcery. I mean, this is a deep subject, of course, and I don't have time to go into it, but I am just saying that technology, I began to view technology in a different way. In fact, I am starting to believe that a lot of technology is spiritism that we can actually hold in our hand. I mean, it is like, as I mentioned, in Theosophy, they have the profane. Well, I believe that technology is like that one item that you can hold in your hand that actually something greater is going on. You call it science. You think it's working a certain way, but it's something different. It's much like the brain. You can hold the brain. You can hold a brain in your hand. That's what you see, but what actually is going on, consciousness and all that, is far beyond the brain. It's sort of like that. I'm beginning to believe that. And I thought, am I the only one that believes that? No. I began to read and listen to other people that are saying the same thing. So I kind of went off there about the technology, but it was just very strange to see that how technology is a form of magic. So that really woke me up big time to what is going on in this world. And there's just so many other things. I can just go on and on. But as I was learning these things, like I said, I almost started going the direction of how maybe this is the way the world works, and maybe the good theosophy could be true. In fact, even on my phone, on my wallpaper, I would have a picture of a pyramid. By the way, the pyramids are very important to the controllers for mysterious reasons. It is just craziness. Like I said, I can go on and on about these things. But something happened as I was learning these things. My son, this was really sad at the time. I was really depressed. My son, who was starting to study all the same things that I was studying. In fact, he would call me up and say, "Hey, Dad, did you know about this? You know about that? I've learned this, that." I mean, I was learning a lot just from listening to him. He was waking up spiritually. However, the direction he went was back to the watchtower. He went. Sorry about that. The battery in my phone went out, so that's why it ended a little bit weird, but I wanted to finish out the video, and and we're almost done here. I just wanted to say how my son, how he went back to the Watchtower Society. And it was actually key for me waking up when he went back to the Watchtower Society. Yes, I was very depressed, but my son needed to experience some things in the Watchtower that helped him actually to move forward with God. Because when he went back to the Watchtower, he was only there a short period of time, very short period, maybe a couple months. He wanted to give 110% to the Watchtower. He never had put himself 100% ever in the Watchtower when growing up, and now he wanted to, because now God was coming alive to him in his mind. So he went back, and when he left the Watchtower Society again, and he says, "Dad, I can't do it anymore," because what he learned is that in the Watchtower, they're just like any other religion. Nobody cares about spiritual things. He was putting 100% of his time and energy into this, the door-to-door and all of that, and he said people just don't care. None of it. None of it's important to them. And then on top of that, he began to read the Bible, and he began to see that they do not teach the Bible. They are lying to the people. He began to study, the partaking of the bread and wine, all of that. He could see that the Watchtower Society has been lying to the people. So he left, but still he was awakened in his mind to God. Well, one day he called me up. He wanted to talk to me about a couple of things. And those two conversations, they were pretty short, began to awaken in me this thought of God. And I want to share those conversations and what effect it had on me in my next video. So we're going to conclude the video here. I now have that completely covered about the New World Order, and you can see that I just want to go on and on talking about it because it's a very important subject. Like I said, we are entering a time like no other, and people that have laughed at people like myself over the years, because I used to just ignore these people as well, they're soon going to stop laughing because they're going to see that everything that I said is true. And it's not because I take credit for it. No, I've learned these things from other people, from other Christians as well. And right now, in this time of my life, God, for the last few years, he's put in certain things in my heart to do. And these are things that just drive me. I mean, I feel this obligation to do certain things. Well, at this time, for the last few years, God has put it in my heart to try to share this information with people, to wake them up spiritually. It doesn't matter how much it pains people to hear this, because a lot of people, in fact, Christians, I will admit, are the worst. They don't want to hear about what is to come, which is really, really sad. But I believe that God has put it in my heart to continue on, because for some reason, no matter where I go, I can't stop talking about these things, about what is going to happen. It's not because I'm a prophet or anything like that. No, it's just because when you're awake and you know what the big plan is, this is all spiritual. It is a spiritual war, and Christians need to be aware of what their life's going to be like shortly. So that's the drive right now. And I totally believe God is moving me in that direction. So that's why I get excited about it, and I want to share the message with as many people as I can. Well, anyway, let's conclude there. And then after this video, we will continue more in the godly realm of things and what woke me up and things that I did. There were a lot of things I did which really proved that I was moving forward in my journey to Christ. So anyway, we'll conclude there. Until the next video, please like, subscribe, and share these videos with as many as you can. And if you know of any ex-Jehovah's Witnesses or Jehovah's Witnesses that are beginning to weaken in their faith for that man-made organization and realize that these guys don't know what they're talking about, share these videos with them. Have them listen from the first video in the order that I have presented to them, and perhaps it will help them to wake up and also help them to see that there is hope, that a person does not have to leave the watchtower and be depressed. No, he can move forward. God will take him.